The Symbolism of Capricorn and Goats. Capricorn is the 10th sign in the zodiac. Its pictorial representation has the head of a goat and the tail of a fish. Astrologically, Capricorn is considered an earth sign, a negative sign, and one of the 4 cardinal signs. And I quote, "Earth in astrology with Taurus and Virgo, Capricorn is one of the earthly trigon, and black, russet, or a swarthy brown was the colour assigned to it." Negative. Negative polarity signs, also called passive or feminine signs, are the 6 even-numbered signs of the zodiac: Taurus, Cancer, Virgo, Scorpio, Capricorn, and Pisces. Negative signs make up the earth and water triplicities. Cardinal. The cardinal signs initiate the beginning of the 4 seasons. Astrologically, Capricorn is also said to be ruled by the planet Saturn. So what does this mean? Another quote. "A planetary ruler is given to each sign, over which the planet is said to have a more powerful influence when positioned therein." The Gates of the Gods. Capricorn, as an actual constellation of stars, is faint. But despite this, whereas Cancer was the Golden Gate through which souls descended from heaven into human bodies, its opposite sign, Capricorn, is said to house the Gate of the Gods, where souls of the departed ascended back to heaven. And there is a reason for this belief. Capricornus has Messier 30, a globular cluster of stars in the southeast of Capricornus, at about the declination of the sun, when the latter is at the December solstice. And Hindus believe that if one dies on or around this date, one ascends to the gates of the gods and thus goes to paradise. The winter solstice and the goat. The winter solstice occurs when either of Earth's poles reaches its maximum tilt away from the sun. It is thus the day with the shortest period of daylight and longest night of the year. When the sun is at its lowest daily maximum elevation in the sky. For our ancestors, it was a momentous time of year. Either pole experiences continuous darkness or twilight around its winter solstice. But this is the point when, from a time of darkness, often limited or even no food, and bitter cold, people knew that the sun, bringer of light, warmth, new growth and food, starts to climb up, appearing higher and higher in the sky each day. The winter solstice is celebrated in many ancient cultures. Yule or Yuletide, for example, is a pagan religious festival. Observed by the historical Germanic peoples. And why is this relevant? Indeed important in understanding the mystic symbolism of Capricorn, because under the tropical zodiac, Capricorn runs from about December the 21st to January the 21st the following year, and the December solstice is usually celebrated on the 21st or the 22nd of December. This is why the symbol of the goat is used. Goats climb up and up, just like the sun, and they keep on going, never stopping, no matter how steep the ascent is, until they reach the top, the summer solstice in June. It is worth adding that so important was the solstice to our ancestors that ancient monuments such as Newgrange in Ireland, shown here, and Stonehenge in the UK, are aligned with the sunrise or sunset on the winter solstice. Age of the sign. The winter solstice was once an important occasion wherever you were in the world. In the far north it signalled better times ahead for people with limited heating, poor food supplies and the dangers of darkness in the forests. For other peoples further south and nearer the equator, it might indicate a time of harvest. Peter Espach, 2006, Master's thesis. The constellation was first attested in depictions on a cylinder seal from around the 21st century BC, and it was explicitly recorded in the Babylonian star catalogues before 1000 BC. Indeed, despite its faintness as the astronomical constellation Capricornus, it has one of the oldest mythological associations. When the Babylonians used MULSUÐUR.MAŠ, the goatfish, as a symbol of their god Ea, the immense importance of the sign to our ancestors, the consistently odd addition of the curly tail over thousands of years, and this is from Berlin's Pergamon Museum and dates back to the BC era. This is Albrecht Dürer's star map, 1471 to 1528, of the Northern Hemisphere. And this is from Sidney Hall's Urania's Mirror, first published in 1824. Leading right up to one of Salvador Dali's interpretations. All lead us to conclude that the tail signifies something a good deal more important than the rainy season or the time of floods, which has been the suggestion in some books and sites. And one apparently controversial explanation is that our ancestors were attempting to explain symbolically a phenomenon called the precession of the Equinoxes, which describes how Earth wobbles on its axis in a cycle that lasts 26,000 years, which rather indicates their knowledge was a good deal more advanced than we give them credit for. But then I think we knew that. This is Peru's earthquake-proof sexy woman. Precession of the Equinoxes. The Earth rotates, white arrows, once a day around its rotational axis, red. But this axis itself rotates slowly, white circle, in a cycle of approximately 26,000 years. This wobble doesn't affect the ecliptic or the sun's position relative to the horizon. So a monument like Stonehenge continues to mark the rising and setting of the sun after 4,500 years. Similarly, if you travel to Chichen Itza on Mexico's Yucatan Peninsula during the vernal or autumnal equinox, you could still watch the shadow of the 1,100-year-old great snake god Kukulkan slither down the pyramid steps. So you may ask, what's the problem? And the problem is the further division of time into units that can be used to record events. The calendar. How was it to be done? Man sought to discover the world and its systems, to be prepared for events, and either use them or mitigate against them. Had this sort of thing happened before? When did it happen? So they saw that if they wished to keep more detailed records of when something happens and whether a system existed, they needed a calendar, and a calendar that gave them a date for some measurement of time. How to devise a calendar. Possibly the first scientific act was to answer the question, how do we split up time? So that if something like a flood or an eclipse, global warming or global cooling occurs, the same date can be checked back in previous years to see if this was a regular thing, a system. But a year actually equals approximately 365.25 days because of the precession of equinoxes. Or to put it another way, the tropical year, which measures the cycle of seasons, for example, the time from solstice to solstice or equinox to equinox, is about 20 minutes shorter than the sidereal year, which is measured by the sun's apparent position relative to the stars. To give some idea what can go wrong if you don't take this precession into account, it is worth exploring the development of the calendar. The Julian calendar, proposed by Julius Caesar in 708-46 BC, was a reform of the Roman calendar. This calendar became the predominant calendar in the Roman Empire, and subsequently most of the Western world, for more than 1,600 years. But then, in 1543, Nicholas Copernicus unveiled his theory in which the Earth, along with the other planets, rotated around the Sun. But by adopting a new approach to the calendar, all dating and time measurement went haywire, because it used a different reference point. And by using the new system, the date of Easter no longer fell on the actual vernal equinox, which was the time the Church used, and why a year is said to have approximately 365.25 days. So, Pope Gregory XIII ordered the new calendar's adjustment, resulting in the Gregorian calendar. Worldwide adoption took place over the subsequent centuries, first in Catholic countries and subsequently in Protestant countries. Then worldwide, all occurring on different dates, and no doubt it was chaotic. This may seem irrelevant, but true science requires accurate measurement with a common date and time attached. The Gregorian calendar addressed the disproportion between day and year and the effect of precession by the use of leap years, and the exclusion of century years not divisible by 400. 1700, 1800 and 1900 were not leap years. 2000 was. Meanwhile, we are discovering yet more odd anomalies even affect the ecliptic. It has since been discovered that the ecliptic itself moves slightly. Furthermore, the other planets also cause a small movement of Earth's axis in inertial space, and this has been named planetary precession. So what has the tale of Capricorn to do with the problems of dates, calendars, equinoxes and their precession? The theory is that our ancestors knew of the precession of equinoxes, knew we would not notice this in our short lives, knew we were likely to mess it all up in the future, but tried to give us clues. And this is why Capricorn emerges from water with a fishy tail that spirals. A final thought, some light relief. Al-Qabisi, also known as Al-Qabitius, died in 967. He was a famous Arab astrologer in the circle of Saif al-Dawla, the ruler of Aleppo. Johannes Hispalensis and Johannes de Saxonia published a book in Latin in 1485, purporting to be a translation of his called The Work of Al-Qabitius in the Investigation of the Stars. And in this it is said that Capricorn governed the knees. This is seen in the picture, using just the head of the goat. This only has interest to my husband, now 74, who is a Capricorn, an astrological skeptic, but suffers from rheumatic knees.